What's good? It's Woog. Next Saturday, we have the mega bout between Deontay Wilder and Luis Ortiz. This is the rematch. Deontay Wilder had a late stoppage in their first fight, and it was also the fight where Deontay Wilder was wildly rocked and badly hurt in the middle rounds by Luis Ortiz. More hurt than he's been in his entire career, but he was able to turn it around with some help of some weird officiating, some weird doctor practice, where at the end of the round, Deontay Wilder is super shaken up. He's visibly just out of it, makes it back to his corner, sits down, recovers, and then at the start of the following round, they actually call time, have him walk to a neutral corner, and the doctor evaluates him for another 30 seconds or so to just ensure that he's all right, looking into his eyes and so forth, which in my opinion, bought Deontay Wilder just enough time to be able to continue the fight, and Deontay Wilder, a couple rounds later, was able to score the TKO over Luis Ortiz, giving Luis Ortiz the first and only loss of his career. Ortiz has since fought 3 times, winning all 3 of those fights, 2 out of the 3 by knockout or TKO. Deontay Wilder, since their first fight a year and a half ago, has had 2 fights, one the epic draw between him and Tyson Fury, and then a first round knockout of Dominique Brazil. So what do I expect in this rematch? At first, you have to look at the age. When they first fought about 18 or so months ago, Luis Ortiz was 38 years old, already an aging fighter. He is now 40 years old. So that's one big thing to keep in mind. Deontay Wilder has power throughout the entire fight, from the first round to the 12th, as evidenced by his 12th round knockdown, nearly knockout of Tyson Fury. 12th round. For that power to carry that long into the fight, where you're supposed to be too exhausted to really put a lot of weight and power behind your punches, not in the case of Deontay Wilder. He carries that power throughout the whole fight, and that's also the reason why he has knocked out or knocked down every fighter he has fought for his entire career. It wasn't until Stiverne fought him and took up the distance that a fighter had even gone the distance with him, and in Wilder's rematch with Stiverne, he knocked him out badly, devastatingly in the first round. Granted, Stiverne was apparently out of shape. He had taken the fight on, I believe, late notice, and he just isn't the same fighter that he was when he first fought Wilder. So Tyson Fury is the only other fighter to carry Wilder the distance, and Wilder has prodigious power. It's something that we have seen very few times in the history of boxing. The only other fighters I could really think, heavyweights we're talking, that have the power of Deontay Wilder would perhaps be George Foreman, Ernie Shavers, Joe Louis, maybe Mike Tyson, maybe Lennox Lewis. Very, very few. It's a short list, and Deontay Wilder hits as hard as about anybody we've seen in the history of the sport. So let's look at Deontay Wilder's other rematch and how he responded. He fought Stiverne, as I mentioned, for a second time, and instead of going the distance, he knocks him out in the first round. Well, this is a lot different in that Luis Ortiz has been very active since his last fight with Wilder. Stiverne was very inactive since his first fight with Deontay Wilder, so you expected a big drop-off in performance from Stiverne. Wilder is very motivated, has seemingly remained motivated so far for his entire career, and there is an outside chance that Wilder could be overlooking Ortiz and looking at that bigger fight against Tyson Fury. I don't think that that's the case here because of how badly he was hurt and how close he came to getting knocked out himself against Luis Ortiz. So I think he's going to give him the respect of properly training and preparing for this fight. Now, from Luis Ortiz's standpoint, he came very close, as I mentioned, to knocking Deontay Wilder out in that first fight. So maybe he, a southpaw, could look at some things that he wasn't doing in the first fight. I personally thought that he boxed wonderfully. Regardless of what the judges' scorecards read at the time of the knockout, I thought that Luis Ortiz won probably 4 out of the first 6 rounds against Wilder. I thought he won at least 2 out of the first 3, and I think halfway through the fight, it was very even with a slight edge to Ortiz. So he, like a few other fighters, has been able to confuse Wilder and kind of, neutralize a lot of Wilder's advantages early in the fight. The thing is, you have to be able to do that for 12 rounds to keep yourself from getting knocked the hell out by Wilder in the middle to late rounds. Can Ortiz do that at 40 years old? I don't think so. In my opinion, there are two ways that Ortiz can win this fight. He can possibly outbox Wilder for 12 rounds. I don't think it's likely, because even if he's up on the scorecard by the 8th, 9th round, I just think that Wilder's power and reach is going to catch up with Ortiz as he tires in the late rounds. Or Ortiz can actually hurt Wilder early in the fight. Maybe he could catch him cold and dry. Maybe Wilder doesn't work up the sweat that he needs to by the time he enters the ring, which is kind of hard to believe. Wilder seems like he's always sweating, even in interviews. He's a pretty intense dude. I don't see him coming in dry and cold to this fight. He always works up a good sweat. So, but it is possible that Ortiz, who himself has knockout power, can hurt Wilder early in the fight. So at first I was thinking, let's go against conventional wisdom here, and let's say Ortiz takes Wilder the distance. Maybe Wilder's going to be a little bit more gun shy because he knows that there's a chance that he could get hurt. Maybe he uses his jab a little bit more in boxes and then gets a controversial call and gets some love from the judges. It's possible, but I actually think it's more likely that it's an earlier finish than the first fight, and that Wilder is able to get him out of there within the first 5 to 6 rounds this time. Why do I think that? Well, one, because Ortiz is 40 years old. 2, Ortiz has been through a lot with his family. His daughter, was very sick and had an illness that they've been, battling for some time, and it looks like she's, more or less out of the woods, with her sickness. And Ortiz has been very open about this struggle. He loves his family very much. He's also a fighter who wasn't able to break big in the United States until later in his career. By the time he had his breakout fights, that knockout of then top contender Bryant Jennings, Luis Ortiz had to come up in Cuba, where he, was one of the several boxers who've made it big through the ranks in Cuba. Cuba's got one of the greatest boxing populations out there. The problem is it's difficult to defect. So, it's only the rare cases, in the case of Guillermo Rigondeaux, Yuriorkis Gamboa, in MMA, UFC, Yoel Romero, and obviously Luis Ortiz. So he actually spent his physical prime still in Cuba, which is a damn shame, because I would have loved to have seen him fight a Vladimir or Vitaly Klitschko while he was still in his prime. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see that. And I think that this is one of those fights where it can potentially be a cash-out fight. Now, I should and do give Luis Ortiz a lot more credit than that and a lot more respect than that, to think, okay, why would I say that a fighter of the pedigree of Luis Ortiz would take a cash-out fight and wouldn't either wouldn't prepare the same way or wouldn't have the same heart, desire, and belief in the fight with Wilder, to where he really, really has a strong chance at winning in the middle, the beginning, or the end of the fight. I just think that at this point of his career, that this is potentially one last major payday where he can then ride off into the sunset. But then the converse of that argument would be, well, if he beats Wilder, then the sky's the limit, and he could potentially land a big fight with, Joshua, Tyson Fury, Andy Ruiz. Promotional disputes and politics aside, I'm just talking about what's possible if you become the guy to beat Deontay Wilder, or if Ortiz beats Wilder in the second fight, that could land them a rubber match, possibly after Wilder, fights Tyson Fury after the Luis Ortiz fight. But who knows, if Wilder loses to Ortiz, that could ruin all kinds of plans for that, rematch between Fury and Wilder, to where a rubber match with Wilder and Ortiz can actually generate big money. And then Ortiz, win, lose, or draw in that third fight, can ride off into the sunset with an even bigger payday. I'm really looking forward to this fight. I've got Wilder by a mid-round stoppage, but who knows? This is the heavyweight division, and stranger things have happened. And it really wouldn't even be that strange if Ortiz were to beat Wilder, because Ortiz has always been a top-tier heavyweight fighter. Let me know what you think about this fight. What happens if Wilder wins? Do we really go directly into that Wilder-Fury rematch? And what does happen if Luis Ortiz pulls off the upset here? Do they go right into a third match, the rubber match, before a Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder rematch? Let me know your thoughts. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.